What's good, everybody? This is Jet Set Shattuck dropping some hot Faraga on this mic. Assault Spy is one of those games that you buy on sale because it looks mildly interesting, but it winds up being so much more than you thought. I never really expected that the game would be as good as it is. Visually, at least in stills, it's unimpressive. I haven't really heard anyone talk about this game, and I only sat down to play this because developer Wazen, don't know how to pronounce it, I'll say Wazen the rest of this video, released the trailer for their next title and it looked cool. I got Assault Spy a while ago and I finally sat down to actually play the game. Let's talk about the experience and why you're sleeping on this hidden gem. Honestly, Assault Spy isn't a super unique game, but it is a good one and helps to push the character action genre forward. It does this in a few ways. It simplifies DMC style combat without dumbing down the difficulty, has a fun and engaging story as well as characters, and uses style to elevate a game that obviously didn't have a large budget, or probably even a moderate budget. In doing these things, the package winds up being vastly superior to the sum of its parts. The game was developed by Wazen, a former developer for Capcom that worked on Devil May Cry. Wazen, from what little I could extrapolate, is largely a solo indie dev, and I can tell in many ways that this is his first game as lead, but I think it's so precise in its execution that you don't think about it. I want to talk about presentation first because despite it looking benign on the surface, they really made a game that is going for a certain aesthetic. Assault Spy isn't an amazing looking game, but when you account for art style, graphical styling, UI design, character design, and graphical fidelity, it all comes together smoothly. When you add a decent soundtrack on top of that, it gets even better. Character design is really nice and done by artist Oguchi. To be honest, it's a bit on the hard side to find more of their work, but after finding more of their art, you can see where they were going for Assault Spy. Characters are sleek, detail is added when it matters, and when something can be simplified, it is. Asato is the perfect example of this. He wears a simple business suit, but underneath is an armored vest with more high frequency detail. The softer shading combined with really nice colors really lends itself well to the in-game character portraits. This is something I noticed that is generally prevalent in their art, but Assault Spy really leans into that. You can tell a character's personality from their hair down to their shoes. One of my favorite characters in their game was Kanako. You can tell by design alone that despite training to be a spy, she obviously wasn't built for it. She's immature and happy-go-lucky with a mischievous side to boot. Oguchi really leans into making faces expressive and ultimately matching what the voice actors are acting out. This helps to keep the simple text-based cutscenes really engaging. The UI is also very simple. It's obvious that the game was made on a budget, but Wazen uses that to their advantage. Text is simple and modern, utilizing a basic white serif font and black boxes to make everything legible, but also stylish as it fits in with the game's spy theme. The HUD is also very utilitarian, building off of this base to make clean and simple HUD elements that remain legible despite all of the action on screen. The graphics, while nothing to write home about, get the job done. The robot enemies are done well and the characters look enough like their character portraits that it isn't jarring. Again, utilizing its setting, Assault Spy opts for a lot of reflective surfaces with black, gray, and white. The story follows a couple of spies invading a massive tech company, so their limitations actually become an advantage. The game is built in Unreal, and in some areas it has that look, but again, Wazen and the artists that they had working on this made decent yet simple models while utilizing lots of particle and visual effects that emphasize the action. In motion, the game looks good most of the time. Sometimes the reflections can look a little garish, and when the models are zoomed in on, you can see how low budget the game really is, but because the camera is often pulled out and things move fast, you don't notice. Like I said beforehand, a lot of stuff in the game's visual design is simple. It follows the philosophy of less is more. If I had one word to describe the graphics of the game, it would be pragmatic. The game does what it needs to do to be stylish and convey what it needs to the player. It's not the greatest looking game, but it's one of those style over fidelity things. And when it comes to the music of this game, it's good, but I did leave feeling a bit disappointed. I didn't run into any piece of music I specifically disliked, but I didn't feel an urge to sit down and listen to the game's soundtrack like I do with so many other games. I just don't think the soundtrack has grown on me like I wanted it to. This isn't to say that I don't think the soundtrack has some good pieces, just that I didn't gel with them as much as I wanted to. The music is very much made to convey intensity, and it does that extremely well. Maybe I just need to sit down and listen to the OST more. Like I said with the visuals, the soundtrack is very pragmatic. Even if I didn't particularly care for a track, it did its job. However, the tracks I do like, I really like. The game has this rock, metal, and EDM mashup style soundtrack that I like, despite it sometimes getting a little bit stale. My favorite track has to be Override the System, which I believe is the game's theme. It doesn't get old and continues to mix it up throughout the track. Heroic Salaryman is also really good. The syncopated guitar melody on top of the fast-moving synths and drums sound like something out of a Sonic Riders, and that's how it goes for the most of the good or even great tracks in this game. If they leaned into that more heavily, I'd be all on board. I do think Takahiro Eguchi did a solid job all around. He's actually worked on the Sonic franchise previously, or at least that's where I recognize his name from. And again, I probably need to give the soundtrack another try because I loved his work in the past and I love some of the tracks here. I just don't love everything like I imagined I would. And ending off the presentation section, the game does have an unforeseen performance issue. I ran the game at high for most of my playthrough, and when you see the double trigger function, the game somewhat flips out. This happened on both my integrated graphics and my dedicated graphics. I don't know why. Maybe it's my system, but I did want to bring this up. Otherwise, the game is really smooth and ran without any hitches. Assault Spy is one of those cases where you can't judge a book by its cover. The game's visuals are really unassuming until you see them for yourself. The game tailors its visuals in such a way that you're focused more on how things look in motion. Animation work is really good and the particles are over the top. It's very much a situation in which the game is hindered by its budget, but it goes for an approach where less is more and winds up looking really clean in the long run. When you add in a soundtrack that really helps keep the energy flowing, Assault Spy really delights. And not to interrupt, but if you haven't already subscribed, help a brother out. We're trying to hit 500 subs. Thank you. So let's talk about gameplay. I'm going to be quite honest when I say Assault Spy is a hidden gem as far as gameplay is concerned. When you first start off the game, it's very obvious that Devil May Cry is the basis for its gameplay. But where I think it improves is how it approaches input and movement. Assault Spy movement is very much built around the player dashing from enemy to enemy to keep the combo going. Both characters have a dash/run, which is extremely fast and can cancel out of many of the combos in the game. Because of this, enemies are generally unrelenting in their assault, and perfect dodges are heavily rewarded in a game where you can only get hit 6 times. Assault Spy uses DMC gameplay as its base, but utilizes concepts and ideas from other games in nominal ways. Combo structure is basic. It utilizes basic button combos with a mix of holds and just frames instead of motion inputs, which I really appreciate. It makes it as easy to hop in as you can possibly make it, but it still allows the combat to have a high skill ceiling. On top of that, it has basic functions like launches and dashes neatly integrated into the base moveset. The button-based combos don't punish those that mash, but do reward those that are conscious of what they're doing. The use of holds add a level of complexity and timing in combos that's often reserved for characters like Virgil in the Devil May Cry series. The just frames reward precise timing with increased damage without punishing players for not being able to execute. The game is built around rewarding those that take the time to learn while still being accessible to those that may mash. The punishment comes from enemy difficulty rather than difficulty in execution, and I love that. Combos are both easy to cancel and extend. The time between hits to up your score isn't insane in either direction and helps to allow for dealing with enemies, which often have ranged attacks. Air combat is also really good. There's a focus on utilizing player tools to keep enemies moving between the air and the ground with swift speed. Getting in the air feels a little less stiff than it does in DMC and more like it does in Bayonetta. The basis for the 2 players you play around, also Asato and Emilia, are pretty obvious. Asato is like a combination of Dante and Virgil, while Emilia is like a combination of Nero and Bayonetta. Asato is the harder of the 2 to use and is the first character you're actually introduced to. Asato doesn't do a ton of damage up front, but focuses on keeping enemies stun locked while stacking damage with tools like cards and throwable suitcase to ultimately do big damage with his umbrella finisher. It also feels like he moves a little faster than Emilia. I don't know if that's placebo or not. And with the ability to summon Kanoko, you can also distract enemies so your combo doesn't get interrupted. All around, Asato really does give you the sense that you're using a combat-ready spy. His combos, especially in-game, are super flashy, feel satisfying, and emphasize speed and wit above all else. And at about halfway through the game, you unlock Emilia, and boy is she a cannon. win. Emilia is focused on getting a ton of big finishes back to back. She's rather easy to use and rewards relentless assault above all else. She has a meter attached to combo performance that allows you to hold an attack and launch a huge shock attack that eats all other moves while also shredding enemy defenses. The attack scales with combo length and effectiveness, but it's pretty easy to max out. In conjunction with this, she has a gun that she can utilize to extend combos and keep pressure on enemies that are blocking. Both characters have a double trigger function. Asaru's is akin to Witch Time and Bayonetta, stopping time and allowing Asaru to do major damage in that stop time, while Emilia's is more like a traditional double trigger, except that it extends when she launches a finisher, and that finisher does extra damage. All around, the gameplay for Assault Spy is phenomenal. In doing research, it seems a lot more people prefer Emilia's combat, but I'm a lot more partial to Asaru's. I think his combo potential is honestly slept on, and I'm baffled that I left this game on the back burner for so long. So, are there any shortcomings for the gameplay? Yes, but not many, and they are functionally just nitpicks. I feel like running shouldn't be stuck to the dodge/dash button, that it should just work by fully holding forward the analog stick. This would also fix the issue of base movement and speed being a little bit too slow, specifically when you're just using the analog stick. Targeting is also a little buggy and not explained well, so there are times when you can attack enemies you didn't really intend to. I just really feel, at least from a gameplay standpoint, Wazen basically crafted a damn near perfect combat system. Enemies are well designed, bosses are fun to fight, there's a nice balance between difficulty and enjoyability, and there's always this overwhelming sense of accomplishment after each fight. The amount of polish on display is truly baffling because this is the first, outing and it's super budget. From at least a gameplay perspective, this game is up there in my favorites in the genre after playing it. So let's talk about the story. Assault Spy has an interesting story setup. It's not one that's amazing, but it is fun. First thing first, the voice acting in this game is incredibly over the top. I don't speak Japanese, but I do believe that the VAs do a great job of conveying character intent and feeling in conjunction with the dialogue. I've got to hand it to them. I didn't expect this to be something that I would really be praising the game for going into it and really think about at all while playing it. The next thing is that the game is very much a comedic take on a James Bond style spy story. The game has its serious moments, but the best way I can explain it is that it feels like a Gintama mini arc where the crew is basically, taking on an odd job to be a spy. With that out of the way, what is the actual plot for the story? You essentially start the game as Salaryman spy Asaru, training transfer Konoko to be a spy. On the way to their first mission, they wind up stumbling into trouble by helping strangers. These wind up being Megacorp Negabots employees. Once entering the building, Asaru and Konoko get dragged into trying to take down Mr. Showtime and Chidori, the villains on the side of the story. Along the way, you meet Irene Yoneda, the head engineer for Negabot. You also occasionally take on rival spy Cosma and occasionally cross paths with CIA agent Emilia. This plot synopsis is only around half of the story, but this is the setup. The game has a really cool plot twist that I liked in concept, and I think you should experience it for yourself, which is why I'm not talking more about the story if you have played the game. The game is really cool. It wasn't the smoothest execution, but it did make for some cool and funny moments as the game goes on. I don't really have anything to complain about from a story perspective. There's the occasional cutscene, but most of the story is told through character portraits, dialogue boxes, or dialogue during gameplay. The character dynamics is probably my favorite thing about this game, actually, especially when it comes down to the story, especially between Asaru and Konoko. Konoko operates on harassing everyone around her, even her comrades, but always doing the right thing. Asaru is a basic salaryman, and Konoko's chaotic energy with his pragmatic approach to things and ideology on things creates really great character moments. I think the story of this game, while enjoyable, is still ultimately something you can ignore if it's something that doesn't interest you. I don't think you should, but again, they make it easy to skip. So let's wrap things up. Assault Spy is one of those sleeper hits that you buy during a sale. It's so unassuming that you don't realize you've got gold on your hands until you play it 5 years after you you bought it. Outside of its story mode, there's also a bloody palace type mode and a boss rush mode. The game also offers higher difficulties for those up to the challenge. I love this game, and I hope we get a sequel to it at some point. I wound up sitting down to actually play it after seeing the trailer for Mike Freya Wazen's next project. I realized I had been sitting on this game for a minute, and then when I realized that it was the same dev, it was time to lock in. The way the gameplay, story, and presentation coalesce is honestly surprising, especially considering how budget you can tell the game is based on visuals. It feels like despite this, the game goes out of its way to make something stylish. These stylish visuals combined with stylish combat and a really fun and engaging story presents a one-of-a-kind experience. If you want to play this game, it's on Steam and goes on sale pretty regularly, I believe. But you've been watching Jet Set Shattuck. Help your boy get to 500 subs. We're so close. But don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. Follow your boy on Twitter. Join the Discord. And remember, Alpha Raga turns to Cold Blizzaga. Chill out with some of my other videos. Peace and have a good one.